My journey as a heritage craftsman. My mother and grandparents were craft show producers throughout my childhood. As a preteen, I was allowed to start assisting with the construction and painting of items they sold. With a love of working with my hands, I excelled in high school woodshop and welding. I was a regular craft entrant in our local county fair throughout my youth. 1993, my interest in history met my enthusiasm for martial arts with the Society for Creative Anachronism. I participated in experiential archaeology with armored combat and began research in the Viking Age. The more heavily involved I got, the more costly my hobby got, so I began to sell my product to support my habit. Decades of research, improving my technique, medium choice of bone and horn, brought me recognition within my group of historical enthusiasts. Even though I was not making many historical reproductions, I was honing my craft in wood and leather. I quickly realized I had to improve my skill and also my quality if I were to sell to historical enthusiasts. I began collecting anything I could read on the Vikings and especially their crafts. I began to add to my modern tool collection and started to collect raw material every opportunity. Experience came slowly as I studied and practiced on my own, with many mistakes as I had no mentor. Crude products turned into more closely accurate reproductions, and in time, I was able to work with some archaeologists and independent scholars with my evolving experience in material culture. My speed and efficiency improved with practice, and my experience brought new revelations in working the material with period appropriate tools. The availability of museum catalogs and the internet brought a wave of data that was previously available only to academics. As publishers realized there was a market beyond libraries and academics, books became available with traveling exhibits, online bookstores, and conferences. Papers became available in searchable databases online, quickly expanding discussions to a global community of academic and laymen. With continual new finds and the availability of instant data online, creating historical recreations was a mouse click away. Data could be shared around the world in seconds from museum curators, field archaeologists, lab technicians, and now passed on to heritage crafters. The internet also connected public libraries and expanded interlibrary loans across community borders. My tools were a mixture of modern power tools and inexpensive carving tools in the beginning. Once I started to carve in earnest, all my profits were spent on purchasing quality tools. I found I favored hand tools as therapeutic, much quieter, and the finish, unlike modern tools, is much smoother. Catalogs of archaeological tools allowed me to build a kit that was closely related to period tools, but, but, but with much higher quality material and tooling. A lot of the tools found in the Mastermeyer find are still available at hardware stores today with offset files, round files, half round, and flat files. The Mastermeyer find also had a variety of saws that I was able to reproduce, as well as saws from the Jorvik find in York, England, displayed here. Sadly, bonework is one of the heritage crafts on the UK Red List as an art in danger of being lost. Because of a lack of bone and horn workers in the world and the Industrial Revolution, there are not many tools being made specifically for these mediums. Most of these tools I've made myself based on historical references, albeit with superior steel. I have designed and have had forged by blacksmiths blades resembling old Horner blades. I have also revised modern tools to repurpose for bone and horn work. In creating my own tools, I've been able to revise them to fit my hand perfectly and in the style I like to carve, a luxury many have forgotten when purchasing mass-produced tools. There are many resources I use to collect my raw material, from walks in the woods, digging compost piles at dairy farms, pet stores, and ensuring that I purchase raw materials anytime I see them. Being of an organic material, each and every piece is a different size, shape, and has their own challenges and hence purpose. As with tools, you learn to work with the material and not have the material work you. You learn to work with grain and how to lay out your artwork to take advantage of defects before they take advantage of you. Over 40 years of crafting, I've come to realize I am no closer to being a master than I was 4 decades ago. The more I learn, the more I realize I do not know that much. Perhaps that is wisdom, a never-ending pursuit. I demo carving as much as possible to show that people were able to make pieces without modern rotary tools or computers. That primitive tools indeed made these beautiful artifacts from the Viking Age. I too had went full circle from modern power tools and transitioning to hand tools appropriate to the Viking Age. With hand tools, you learn how the material responds to a tool, whereas with a power tool, you beat it into submission. Our ancestors would have had an understanding how a tool and raw material best work together, an evolution that is sadly being lost today. With experience comes knowledge, and if properly used, your craft should improve. My horn work now involves almost all hand tools, even to a burnished finish. I often demonstrate that I can descale a horn and burnish to a satin finish faster than people with a power tool, as they have to change out their tool tip or sandpaper, whereas I can do it all quickly with just a knife edge. Knowledge of how a material reacts to a tool is key in any application, especially when working with primitive technologies. My years of woodworking created a much needed skill set to work in horn and bone. The techniques are the same, it is just learning how the material responds to the tool. As discussed above, I created most of my tools as there are no suppliers that I found for bone carving tools. I prefer bone and horn to wood as it is more predictable in nature. I don't have to worry about an unseen grain change as in wood. I can burnish these hard materials with a blade to a satin finish. This understanding of the material came from years of experience working with the material and not against it. While making many reproductions from extant finds, I often will take other artwork and other mediums and transfer it to my medium. For example, I will take runestone carvings in large stones and recreate that on a bone hair stick or a pendant. There are few examples of bone work as being a natural material, it does not weather as well as, say, stonework. Horn is even less likely to withstand a millennium. We do have quite a few Viking Age examples from York, England, and the Jorvik dig. Archaeological finds at Lund and other extant pieces around the world have made it possible for me to make period-appropriate lucets, a braiding tool, for others to use in their experimental or experiential archaeology. Bone needles, ear scoops, jewelry, and hair sticks are some of the most common extant pieces we have, and I have been able to reproduce for others' experiential experience. Museum catalogs, the internet, and exhibits, I am able to get detailed information about the material, where it was found, and more. Mostly I'm interested in detailed pictures of the original to reproduce. As seen here, I've taken metal jewelry and reproduced in bone using period techniques. While many have bought my items over the years for the kit, I've had the opportunity to make specific reproductions for science. The Waterman's Museum in Yorktown, Virginia, has an example of a native fishing spearhead that I made for them from a picture they had in their display. While many say a picture is worth 1,000 words, I believe an actual reproduction is priceless. Not only do we get to see the piece in a three-dimensional perspective, but the artisan also learns about the material culture and can answer questions of how it was made and the challenges. One of the questions that is answered through experimental archaeology, but seldom discussed, is the time to make an object, as this directly affects the cost and importance of a piece. Perhaps adding substance to its meaning, or trade routes and technologies. A lot of data can be gleaned from working with one's hands as an experimental archaeologist. 1990s offered a flood of new connections to fellow artisans and archaeologists around the world. News groups allowed some archaeologists to share artifacts to academics and crafters simultaneously. Dan S.B. Carlson of Sweden was one such archaeologist, taking advantage of a World Wide Web to discuss his finds. Here you can see a bone slab with multiple holes, all the same size. It was widely thought to be a draw plate for Viking wire weaving. My experience with tools and children is perhaps it was simply a test piece for a new drill, or allowing a student or child to practice, as it is obvious it is the same size tool that made all the marks and not practical to be used as a draw plate. I had the opportunity to be a part of this group and discuss artifacts before they were published in catalogs for the general public. The archer's gauge and shoe template were first shown at a lecture by Professor Michael Fuller a month after the dig he participated in. His theory of the pieces use did not match my experience with the material culture. I spoke with him after the lecture, and we agreed that his initial thoughts were not supported with the addition of my experience. The archer's gauge was a puzzle to both of us, as he felt the tool was used as a burnisher on wooden arrow shafts. The problem is bone is not an ideal material for sharpening wood, and the arrow shaft would either fit in the void or not fit, being unable to shave it down. I suggested I make one and we play with it. I did not know it at the time, but we were performing experimental archaeology. After consulting with a bow maker and testing my hypothesis, I approached Michael Fuller with my thoughts of it being a gauge to test if an arrow was straight, and surprisingly, the tool marks in the bone were in a position to mark where the fletchings would go with a blade that left a small, perfect indentation for tying them on. Professor Fuller also stated that the shoe template was a possible insert as it was found with other shoemaking material. I suggested it was too thin to accommodate someone's weight over stones, and perhaps it was a simple template that could be flipped over to do the opposite foot. It could also be used to find a size for the sole by simply having the customer stand on it, like a modern shoe store uses an adjustable gauge. I had made many templates out of wood and other waterproof material for laying out leather pouches and other patterns that I used a lot. Professor Fuller agreed that my theory was most likely its use based on my experience with the material. Would further investigation from a lab and others have resulted in the same suggestions? Most likely, but Professor Fuller realized that going to a crafter gave options that he and his team had not considered. Over the next few years, Professor Fuller brought other drawings of finds to me to get my input as someone familiar with heritage arts in my field of bone and hornwork. The other samples are pieces I have made working with independent scholars and their experimental archaeology projects. September 11th, a date that will go down in history. Moving from the Dark Ages to a period of enlightenment, a journey that derailed some of my beliefs and put me on a new path. While my skills were still there, I learned quickly that I did not do experimental archaeology on an academic level. My skill set was in producing items, crafting, but I had not contributed to society beyond a decorative piece of natural material for my fellow reenactors. The more you know, I gained a very brief glimpse into the world of archaeology and its capabilities. I learned how I can contribute by knowing what data archaeologists were capable of documenting and what they would need from me to advance our understanding of an artifact. I look forward to expanding my reach beyond being a heritage craftsman. I put it best in this quote, but what left the impression was the thought that I could generate and test hypotheses to provide or enhance analogies for archaeological interpretation. I had a little experience with the examples I gave above, but through a scientific approach, I, as a crafter, can make a difference beyond just creating art. During our classes, we dove deep into papers weekly, gaining an understanding of what archaeology is capable of. By understanding the capability of data collection from the field into the labs, I learned what data I could provide as a craftsman. I learned that we had the capability to document fleas and lice in a dig, and able to surmise the layout of a household activity. I learned that simple charred breadcrumbs from 14,000 years ago in Jordan changed our understanding of food production before agriculture. Microarchaeology and pottery changed not only our understanding of production and the technology, but also possible trade routes. Archaeology has gone deeper than ever before in its search for data and its capabilities in processing it. I also learned where the crafter can fit in. At the center of the graphic, we see the experimental archaeologist, which can be interpreted in so many ways. In a perfect world, artifacts are processed from the archaeologist and labs to craftspeople with the skill sets and experience in material culture. While the craftsperson's job is to reproduce an artifact with proper tools and technique, they must document the process in order to support or discredit a hypothesis. If the end product is a reproduction with a proper scientific approach, then the results can be forwarded for further analysis and perhaps duplication. Once an artifact has been vetted, it is then passed along through universities, open-air museums, and the general public. In a perfect world, the historical interpreters and general public, through reproduction, can overturn some of these theories. Living history groups have helped expand our understanding of experiential archaeology, only if they properly document their experience and send it back into the mix, shown in the graphic here. One of my favorite slides when my wife and I lecture on experimental archaeology. Simple questions started the journey at UCD of building an early medieval roundhouse. So much data from construction technique, living conditions, placements of items in the structure, to the tragic night of May 11, 2019, when it was burned to the ground by vandals. The ability to answer so many questions with the structure and its contents using experimental archaeology to students using experiential archaeology to answer other questions of daily life. Then going full circle after the tragic fire back to an archaeological dig and collecting data like a CSI episode and documenting it for the scientific community to use their findings of a burned out structure. An extraordinary journey starting with the scientific question and evolving beyond its initial purpose. Oxford Dictionary defines experiential archaeology as documenting observations of the experience and interpretation of daily life. Many historical groups practice some sort of experiential archaeology weekly around the world, perfecting techniques and expanding their experience. But without documenting their experience or interpretation, no one can benefit or expand on their work. I have learned throughout this course that my craft or hobby does not benefit anyone if I selfishly hold on to the data. I now encourage all heritage craftsmen to go the next step, to go beyond their comfort zone of crafting or experience and publish so others can expand on our work and benefit from our years of experience, as it should be when our ancestors passed on skills to us. Somewhere we lost touch with our past. As we learned the language and culture of archaeology and what data they are capable of recording, it was enlightening when Professor Malloy shared with the class tools that could be purchased on Amazon and allows most of us craftsmen to document our crafts on a macro or micro level. Most people have a cell phone camera these days capable of doing macro of tool marks or simply documenting the steps in their experiments. The other images all help document so others have a precise recording for their own duplication or critique of your data. The center picture on here is of a brain, something we cannot buy, but key to both scientist and crafter. The firing of neurons is different in each personality. Knowing and understanding this, and the fact that while some archaeologists can become experimental archaeologists, their specialty is the science, where the heritage crafter works to hone his skills with their hands. By all participants appreciating the personality difference and how we are different, we can further use each other's skill sets to further our understanding of our ancestors. Using all the tools available to us, we can help bridge the gap between archaeologist and craftsperson. Also documenting a language that both can understand and expand on each other's work. Who am I? I thought I was an experimental archaeologist, then realized I am a heritage craftsman with the tools and capability to become an experimental archaeologist. For now, I'm a heritage crafter who spent decades preparing to teach the next generation, and to use my expertise in material culture and bone and horn to work with academics in the pursuit of answers about our ancestors. I have evolved over the past year at UCD and can now put my years as a heritage craftsman to use as an experimental archaeologist with the tools I have been given. Here we are, a year later. I have redefined who I am and now have a mission to use the tools that my professors have given me, to expand my outreach from teaching in my familiar circles and reaching out to a much broader audience worldwide, from crafter to archaeologists. To pass it forward, according to the UK Red List, bone, antler, and horn work are on the endangered list, meaning there are serious concerns about the craft's ongoing viability. Educate. Educating those that wish to continue the art of bone and horn work. I currently teach a dozen classes a year in these crafts, but want to reach out through social media to a worldwide audience. I have also started lecturing on experimental archaeology to a few museums and living history groups to encourage people to document their crafts and publish if able. While I work to prolong my own craft, my desire is for others to take up the torch for all the other heritage crafts that are endangered. Use the tools. Using the tools that UCD has made me aware of, from writing a poster, presentation, and the exposure to what is archaeology and where I can fit in. As influencers gain millions of users for funny videos, I have learned skills to use the same platforms to promote experimental archaeology. To publish or not to publish? 'Tis not an option. As I stated above, at least in the UK, my craft skills are endangered. I have a responsibility not just to my students, but to our ancestors to learn and promote these skill sets before they are no longer commonplace. To go full circle. I started out this talk with gathering data and tools, reading many a catalog and scientific paper on the Viking Age bone work, to now, with 4 decades of experience, I can now do posters, write a paper, and even make a video like this that promotes my expertise beyond my community. I have gone full circle. Thank you.